BOYLE Sports.
Hello and welcome back to On The Wire, brought to you by BOYLE Sports and Racing TV as we look forward to the Grade 1 action this weekend. The Betfair Chase over at Haydock and the Morgiana Hurdle and John Durkan in Punchestown. We've got a star-studded lineup ready to get stuck into the racing. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content and look forward to the video. Our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, are also giving out sign-up offers for our British-based customers. If you bet £10, you're entitled to £40 worth of free bets. Bet 10 to get 40. Terms and conditions apply. You can look down in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. And we've got a brilliant cast to bring you through the Grade 1 races this weekend, and also a look back at the Cheltenham November meeting and a few fantastic beginners chases over the last few days. And Overall, Donn McClean and Mark Boylan. Don, I'll come to you first. You were at Navan yesterday and all this talk about Kopek de Boer. Just how good was he in the flesh? And I suppose out of 10, how would you rate the performance?
Very high, Andrew. Like, you kind of go into the race, these novice chasers, the top novice hurdlers from last year, going over fences for the first time. There's a little bit of trepidation associated with it, if he's going to be as good or first time over fences in public. But I suppose after the first fence, he just got in a little bit tight. He was better at the second, and then he really jumped the third fence well. And Paul Tannen was kind of trying to restrain him in behind the leaders initially, but then they went to the fence away from the stands and he flew that as well. They took him into the lead. And after that, he was just so good. Like, when he was long, he was good. He was exuberant. We knew he was going to be. But even the second last fence, I think the last fence in the back straight, he wasn't meeting it on a long stride. Paul Tannen asked him to shorten up, and he did, and he popped them. And like, he was so good in doing that. And then when he turned for home, he just allowed him to stride on. His length gain jumping, according to Race IQ, was 12.5, which was good. And the three fences at which he gained most lengths were the last three fences, and he gained most of all at the last fence. And to me, that's significant, that he really warmed to his task. He really took to his jumping. And look, he came away. Lovely Hurling is a good horse. He's rated 145 over hurdles. So to come away from him like he did, and Lovely Hurling in turn was clear of the rest. And then it took Paul a while to pull him up. He went around beyond us and down to the fence on the far side. Everything else pulled up about a half a furlong before him. So all of that, Andrew, like, you really couldn't have asked for much more, I think.
Yeah, well, exactly. You make a very good point about how I was looking at it thinking, almost his jumping, it just got better and better the faster and faster he was going down the back. He was going 26, 27 miles an hour. As you say, he wasn't jumping too exuberantly. And yet, when it comes to the business end of races, which is exactly when, the taps are being turned on, to put in those type of jumps up the final straight was very, very pleasing.
Yeah, exactly. He did, and he traveled so well. And, after the initial kind of being keen through the early part of the race, then he seemed to listen to Paul Town, and he seemed to be doing what he was asking him to do. And look, he's a very inexperienced horse. He's only 5 years old. He's only had 4 runs over hurdles last season. He's got a hurdles mark of 158, which is obviously a very high mark for one so inexperienced over hurdles. And he's in now at whatever 3-1 for the Arkle. I think it's difficult to argue with that. It's a long way out, but and coming, I'm sure the lads will discuss Lulamba now coming on the same day within a couple of minutes of Lulamba. It was obviously topical, the 2 mile chasers for the season. And he's a half brother to Utopia de Board, and she won over 2 miles 6, won a grade 1 over 2 miles 6. So she stayed further, but he's got so much pace and so much speed and so much enthusiasm that, you think 2 miles is going to be his trip all right.
Yeah, he was very, very impressive. Don mentioned it there just around an hour prior. Lulamba had won at Exeter in what looked a hot race for its kind, with Salver in there, Fingal Bridge, who jumped a little bit iffy to start with and kind of got coaxed into the race as a result. Lulamba, it seems to split opinion when you look at social media. Some people saying it wasn't that impressive. but yet the market contracted her. So plenty of people have put their money where their mouth is, thinking it was pretty impressive.
Oh, well, it was. I think there's a combination of factors that would lead you to potentially take the more negative view. I guess the weight for age allowance, obviously this time of year, getting the £8, that's going to degrade as the season goes on. As we saw at Exeter a lot yesterday, fences doled out, so we missed those in the back, so didn't jump as many as would have been originally the plan. And you say maybe Fingalbridge finishing second, having never been in the race, and maybe you can poke holes in it in that regard. But it was a perfectly adequate chasing debut, and I think maybe we were spoiled by the likes of Kopek de Board, who showed a really attacking attitude to his fences. And also prior, we saw Final Demand, who in a very different style, but looked so natural. Lolambo, I think there was never really much doubt about him having an aptitude for chasing. It'd always seemingly been a bit of a view that he would make a chaser. But maybe if we're comparing natural 2-milers, and obviously in this day and age, we always look to march straight away, rightly or wrongly, who would you say is the more natural 2-mile type? And I think most people would agree it is going to be Kopek de Board.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And Mark, the other one that we have to mention is Final Demand, who was the day before at Navan. Now, I must say, there was lofty expectations about this horse going chasing after his hurdling campaign last year. I thought people might be almost over-egging him, but you saw him jump the fences at Navan and he was making them look pretty measly, and it's a stiff course.
I have to say, I tend to go into these things, Andrew, with kind of a cynical mind, but kind of at that sort of price, please go and impress me before you go into auto praise mode. But as you're watching them go one by one at these fences, you're just, this is a bit different to watch. Even I was there on the day, went into the paddock to see him beforehand. He's just some unit. Like he's a bit of a monster to look at, and he should cost all the money he did as a young horse. But he is, in terms of like first start or fences of the three of them, I thought he was in a different league even to the other two. For all that they're going different ways, and maybe it's not fair to compare them, but it just had that wow factor about it. Even for a brief moment, I thought Wingman was just going to hang on his coattails, because you'd imagine this time of year, typically speaking, Gordon Elliott will be a little bit more forward than Willie's. Like Willie, up to that point of the day, had some disappointments at Navan at relatively sharp prices. Last year's Navan Racing Festival, he only ran 3. I don't think any of them won. Facile Vega was his last winner. I think he's only won the previous year. So, it's not typically a weekend he has them wound up. And when we spoke to Willie afterwards, he said this was no way wound up for today. So Wingman gets on his tail, and it was just the class that took him home. I know Wingman made a mistake at the last, but I tried not to get overly impressed first time, but geez, if you couldn't but be impressed by him. And it's just lovely shape to the way he jumps. It's measured. It's like what he is built to do. So look, I know it's a long way, and I'm in the Dan camp there where he mentions about cuts coming at different times of year. Sometimes they can be premature. I just felt watching it, they had to kind of do what they had to do. He's 7-4 for a Brown Advisory now. If the season goes the way it does, he's probably going to go off a monkfish type of price, I'd imagine, in the Brown Advisory. But it's just whether that's your type of poison, whether you like to hang on to those dockets for too long. Are there better 7-4 shots you'll find during the year? Quite possibly. But if you're an anti-post backer, I will not knock you if you do fancy going down that road.
No, certainly not with BOYLE Sports going 7-4 for the Brown Advisory. You can see why plenty of people would get involved. Obviously, it's tying your money up for an awful long time, but he was so impressive. And next up, seemingly, is Limerick at Christmas time, where he won his maiden hurdle last year. Our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, are always trying to make your job as a punter easier. And if you're a new customer in Ireland with BOYLE Sports, you can get up to €70 worth of free bets. If you bet €10, you are entitled to €70 worth of free bets. Terms and conditions apply. Look in the description down below to avail of a brilliant sign-up offer. The majority of this show, we're going to look at the Grade 1s for this weekend, the Betfair Chase at Haydock, and then we have 2 brilliant days of action at Punchestown, the Morgiana on Saturday and the John Durkan on Sunday. We'll start off with the Betfair Chase at Haydock. Those 7 still in there: Grey Dawning, Haiti Colour, Royal Pagaille, Handstands, Stellar Story for Gordon Elliott, Hitman, and great to see the mare Marsh Wren back after an injury last year. A very talented mare in her own right. You would think she's going to come up short in this type of field. And Dan, coming back to you, we've got Royal Pagaille and Grey Dawning first and second in the race last year, and you'd have to look at it, and that would be almost the first port of call form-wise.
Yeah, definitely so. It was very much a case of Grey Dawning's preparation coming into this race last year was very much interrupted. I think they were trying to get a prep run into him. They missed a couple of engagements due to the ground. He still turned up here, well supported, and for a large part of the straight, you thought he was the most likely winner. An errant jump at the last maybe just showed you that the concerns about him coming there fresh, the lack of that prep run, and also the stamina sapping conditions that Royal Pagaille loves so much was eventually what told in the end. See, since then, Grey Dawning had a very protracted career. He beat a Rocco. He was behind Gaelic Warrior at Aintree, which maybe in the context of this race is probably the standout piece of form he's achieved. Seemingly this time around, no concerns. This is the early season port of call. And unlike this time last year, Venetia Williams Yard yet to really hit stride. After Jello won the Charlie Hall, you thought it might be a bit earlier than usual, but subsequent runs from many of her string haven't exactly been up to par really for her time of year. So that would have to be a concern for backing Royal Pagaille.
Yeah, definitely. But Don, I suppose we've got a bit of a fly in the ointment here in Hazy Colour, who's just a horse that keeps on improving, and you just never really know with a horse like this where they're getting to the bottom of. I was lucky enough with Racing TV to go down to her yard a few weeks ago for this Racing Life, just before Hazy Colour ran in the hurdle race at Newbury. And you would have been under no uncertain terms the horse was not 100%. And yet he still has managed to go and win, even in a handicap hurdle. So it just goes to show probably his constitution, also probably his appetite for winning. He's got an awful lot of wins to his name now.
Yeah, like he's such a likeable horse, Andrew. And you don't know where his ceiling's going to come. Like that hurdle race the last day. What struck me about that run was how well he travelled through his race. And then he stayed on really well. He was racing off a hurdles mark, obviously that's way lower, or well, a good bit lower than his chase mark, £9 lower than his chase mark. And as you say, like you know better than I do, it was just a starting point for him. And brilliant, like all his progression has been in handicaps. So this is it. This is the grade one, like taking on the likes of Grey Dawning and Royal Pagaille, the title holder. It's another step forward from him, but like the way he won the Irish Grand National. Again, he travelled like the most likely winner from a long way out. He probably won with a good bit more in hand than the winning margin. And that was obviously 3 miles, 5 furlongs on heavy ground at Fairyhouse. This is 3 miles on a flat, with 3 miles, 1.5 furlongs on a flat track at Haydock. The ground is going to be an issue, isn't it? Because normally with the Betfair Chase, we think very soft ground. I'm still working away on that premise. And that will be a positive for Hazy Colour, not because he needs soft ground. He's got a lot of good form on better ground as well, but because it'll bring his stamina into play, which he undoubtedly has. So, and also, one of the kind of notable features of this weekend for me was, especially at Navan, the fact that horses who had race fitness on their side were maybe outperforming horses who didn't. And the fact that he's had that run over hurdles, that's a big one for me going into a Betfair Chase, especially if the ground does come up on the soft side. So look, he's got £12 to find on official ratings with Grey Dawning, but he's got the potential to go and find at least a little bit of that. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think he's a big player in the race.
Mark, I think the one thing that plenty of people have noted so far this season in the United Kingdom is Dan Skelton's plotting. Been an awful lot said about potentially some of the rides on horses in lesser races, but what we've thus far seen is near on every big race, when the money's there, the prize money's there to be won, he's not far away, if not mopping them up.
I find that fascinating with a view to the whole season. Is Willie Mullins' approach is to be so softly early on. We've seen Dan come out with guns blazing early, and he'll still be very much expected to have that contingent ready to go come March, come April, and finish off strongly. So, you do pick your punches as a trainer as you go, but from a campaign of trying to win a championship, it makes total sense. And I think last year's race will have given them fair ammunition to have understood what's required here. Like, even if you know back, I think he traded at 1.06 on the day when he got beat by Royal Pagaille, very, very short in running. And even the comment from Time for endured a grueling reappearance. And I think that kind of, for me, marked the rest of the season. I think it marked the King George, albeit he got back on track at Kelso. I feel they will go there with that box ticked. Even reading the comments from Dan this week, I don't think they'll be left the chance here. And it is such a different race, as Don's pointed out, when the ground does change here. I have done the stats before on looking at the difference of horses going forward from this race, if it's run on better ground or heavy ground. Like if it is soft or heavy, it does mark the rest of the season. There's very, very few that tend to go on and kind of make Gold Cup level. I think this weekend, I'm not expecting it to be bog material, though. It's good to soft in place at the moment. 5 to 10, I think, possible. Middlewise coming on Wednesday. There might be 2 to 5 Saturday morning. But I don't see it being the most grueling renewal, and I think that kind of plays into this fella's hands as well. 80 Colour, the one thing I've flagged with the Irish National, for all that you have it in your mind that he's, Dower Stair and so on, they went very, very slow in the Irish National. I think Paul Townend, even when he was asked on the day about Cree de Bourbon's run, he said he made mistakes, but they weren't going fast enough to jump. You know, he felt that it just was not your typical race. And often in the Irish National, you see it as well. If horses can get prominent, can stay out of trouble, and you don't have to go out quick in front, but it can be a huge benefit. We saw in the Triton even at the weekend, the 1-2 for a lot of the way ended up finishing 1-3. So I do think that he still has it to prove. I think at this level, Haiti Kalor, I still feel he needs to tick that box. For all that, Grey Dawning isn't on my mind as your Gold Cup candidate type thing, I still think he's very solid in this company, even on his entry run. And for all I'd like to be more, looking for value in a race like this, I feel there's enough factors coming together, and it makes sense to me anyway, Grey Dawning.
Yeah, Grey Dawning for Mark. Dan, just before we move on to the Irish racing, I suppose we should mention Handstands, who's another horse that does have a run under his belt. I think Ben Pauling seemingly was happy enough with that run at Carlisle. Thought he was a little bit ring rusty. He's a horse, though, a little bit like Royal Pagaille. He won't be able to have it soft enough. He wants as much rain as possible. But I think the most interesting thing for him is just how effusive Ben Pauling is about this horse. And also, the form that Yard have been in recent weeks leaves nothing to chance. This horse will be going there in his best health.
Yeah, absolutely. And his reappearance was a bit funny. He was well supported for it. And he just looked, as you say, a bit docile, really. He's a horse who's gone forward in the past. And he just didn't really seem to be almost match ready that day. But as you say, Ben Pauling has never hidden how much he likes this horse. But all the pre-season talk was very much, we're going to give him a gentle start to the season, maybe go to something like the Peterborough, but the main target's going to be the Gold Cup. And lo and behold, 2 starts later, he's turning up in the Betfair Chase, which, as we said, can almost be the end of some horses' seasons. Only 6 years old as well. Only 5 6-year-olds have ever run in the Betfair Chase. 3 of them did win, though. Corto Star, Silvagnaco Conti, Bristol de Mai, all went off 7-4 or shorter. The ones who didn't win were Long Run and Clanders Oboe. So that is a very high-class list of 6-year-olds that have run in this race. And the way Ben Pauling talks, I imagine it wouldn't surprise me if he was worthy of being a part of that list. Currently, he's sort of around the 13-2 mark, only rated 155. So on open level form, you'd say he has a fair bit to find. But Grey Dawning came into this race only rated 157 last year, went off 15-8 favourite. Obviously, he hasn't had that opportunity to prove himself in open company just yet. I think a proper test of 3 miles will probably bring about more improvement. But as you say, we're kind of on weather watch as to how testing is going to be.
This week marks Safer Gambling Week, a cross-industry initiative to promote safer gambling in the United Kingdom and Ireland. Here on The Wire, we always preach safer gambling, and hopefully our viewers can go down that route, only betting what you can afford. And if you do need any sort of help, you can go and look up safergamblinguk.org. We'll move on to the Morgiana Hurdle. We'll move on to Saturday at Punchestown. A fantastic 2 days of racing, as I mentioned already. Willie Mullins, as expected, has plenty in this. Anzadam, Lossiemouth is still in this, despite it seemingly being preference to go to Thatham's Grace again. William Money has been kept in the race, despite Barry Connell potentially saying that he might go straight to Christmas. Aranci's in there, Cargesi's still in there, Endawi, Cashadad, Glen Killen, and good old Winter Fog propping up the numbers. Anzadam, Don, short price for this at the moment, even money around with BOYLE Sports, but he comes with that kind of that factor that I suppose quite a lot of people love, kind of weighing in on that hype horse.
Yeah, look, he's a really exciting horse, Andrew, no question. We don't know a huge amount about him. Like when he won the Grade 3 at Ferryhouse there back in November last year, there's kind of small talk about potential champion hurdle horse this season. Then obviously he went and won at Naas at a very short price, and then a setback ruled him out of Cheltenham. So it's a pity that he didn't get to go there. He hasn't run now since that run in January. So it's quite a while ago. But that said, the way that he won at Ferryhouse and obviously then at Naas, and I suppose as well, the way that Willie talks about him, he's not dismissing thoughts of champion hurdle. And look, it's a pity State Man is out. Obviously, that's changed the picture of the 2 mile champion hurdle division, of course. And I think Anzadam was penciled in for the Fighting Fifth hurdle, while State Man was going for the Morgiana Hurdle, but that may change now. But look, he's a he's a really exciting horse. He's really lightly raced horse. He's only a 5-year-old, so we still don't know how good he's going to be. But it's going to be interesting now stepping into Grade 1 company, depending on what takes him on. Lossiemouth, as you say, probably go for the Hatton's Grace Hurdle. RNC was very good at winning at Punchestown, winning the KPMG Champion Novice Hurdle over 2 miles at Punchestown. They went very, very fast in that race, and Mark Walsh gave him a super ride, held him up in behind. But he looked impressive in winning it, and he's another lightly raced horse. He is 7. He's a little bit older, obviously, than Amsterdam, but he's got plenty of potential upside to him as well. But look, I think Amsterdam is probably the horse I'm looking forward to seeing most. And if he does take his chance, then he's the one they all have to beat.
Mark, William Money, as I mentioned, was potentially not going to run here, but he's been left in at the 5-day stages. We don't have full official kind of declarations at this stage just yet when we're recording, but he is a fascinating horse. And obviously, you do look at how good Kopek de Board is, as we've mentioned earlier on in the show, and he gave him a right race at Cheltenham and potentially could have gotten a little bit closer without a mistake at the last.
Yeah, I utmost respect for William Money. I think even in that champion hurdle picture, he's probably the one that still value-wise, there might be something in him, but the timing of the setback with a view to this race has been what puts you off, I suppose, in that sense. I'd still actually look at the race, and I think maybe Barry Connell did rule him out. He stressed at the time it was a very small setback. It was just a case of time, and I think 12 days out from it. He's left him in at this point. Doesn't mean he's definitely going to run. But in the interim, you had that small matter of State Man up in there. So there's a big difference in making sure your gun is loaded to go and have a crack at State Man and maybe have a go at these. Now, Lossiemouth is left in, but you remember last year as well, she was declared for this race. She was taken out on the day. They let State Man run. I think the official reason was a stone bruise, but you'd imagine it would have been unlikely anyway for the two of them to take on each other. I'd imagine she'll still stick to the same path that has worked and go down the Hatton's Grace route, which will leave the path there for Amsterdam. And on ratings, is there a pound? I think is all there is between William Money and Amsterdam. It's a case of which one we see in peak shape. I'd imagine Amsterdam, if he was getting ready for the fight in the 5th prior to this, he'll be pretty forward. But as I mentioned, Willie's horse this time of year, you're not going to get to see the very best of him immediately. And I know Barry Connell is surely working back from a Tuesday in March as well, William Money, but I wouldn't like to underestimate it. I think he's 3 times the price of him at the moment. You're basically, if he gets there, I doubt they're going to run him just for the sake of it either. Like They do mind their horses. He thought Marine National last weekend when there was a chance that the ground might not suit. They did take him out, and it wouldn't have been fresh ground either. So I'd be pretty positive about him, really. And Irancy, horse I have a lot of time for, but still, I think in the overall picture of form of what's been established, I think William Money has done more. I think he's a pound behind him, but I think he stands up very, very favourably with them. So it'll be a readiness thing. And I think if you get there on the day and they are declared, it'll be a watch the market job. I think in particular, if there was market confidence behind him, it would encourage you to go on again. But I thought of the novice hurdles last year, Andrew, in Cheltenham, Kopek de Boer beating William Money with Romeo Coolio back in 3rd. And I know Salvatore Mundi running poorly back in 5th. I felt that was stronger form than the New Lions in beating the Yellow Clay, who obviously has been beaten since, because I don't think we saw the real final demand at Cheltenham. So I think he's probably a little bit underestimated still, but I'll be watching the market come today.
Dan, your thoughts on the race as a whole? I suppose going back to Amsterdam's debut in Ireland back at Ferry House, I thought I was being very clever taking 7-4 on Cala Conti. That slip is still in some bin at Ferry House, unfortunately. But he's been very impressive in 2 starts, but he does seem to be fragile. And he's up against potentially 2 horses in William Money and Arancia who had good novice hurdle campaigns.
Yeah, he's very much the exciting unexposed horse, and I guess there was a time not too long ago before Stateman's unfortunate injury, we were dreaming he would come over for the Fighting Fifth to test against Constitution Hill and the New Lion, but understandably that's not going to happen. In terms of upside, I mean, it's hard to have more upside than I think he potentially has, but this is going to be a new test entirely. Arancia, obviously, Punchestown Grade 1 winner in a race that pretty much fell apart, 18-1, 3rd string. Kopek de Boer, we know, disappointed. Salvatore Mundi, having been held up before, far too keen out in front, set the race up really for a closer. And Arancia was patiently ridden, came through to win. So the form of that is maybe hard to assess, but they're seemingly quite high on him. I guess the other interesting angle into this race is Cargeese, who seemingly remains over hurdles. There'd obviously been a bit of a toing and froing between where her and Jade de Grugy are going to run. Jade de Grugy now has that entry in a novice chase, or beginner's chase rather, at Cork. So that path now seemingly decided. And assuming Lossiemouth doesn't run, Cargeese on official figures, based on that run behind State Man, is actually the best here with a £7 allowance, rated 152, getting £7. Obviously, very headstrong mare, probably want a good pace to run at. But it will be a a fascinating kind of lesson on where they all stand, because unlike when we have state man turn up, we're still learning about most of these. Like a lot of these are either having their first start in an open company, or maybe need to take their form to a new level in some respect to really go and prove to be an open grade 1 level. So an informative contest, but maybe Cargies, if she does appear, she'll probably be the third string on bookings, and maybe it'll be Danny Mullins on, but I don't think she's necessarily the back number that her current price suggests she will be.
One of the other great offers from our sponsors, BOYLE Sports, is best odds guaranteed, applying to all singles and multiples. You can get bog on all singles and multiples at BOYLE Sports. We will move on to Sunday's racing at Punchestown with the John Durkan Memorial Punchestown Chase. If we thought the Morgiana was an interesting race, this is an absolute beano. Factophile, Gaelic Warrior, fast or slow. Last year's Gold Cup winner, I know the way you're thinking, 8-1 at the moment. Hartwood, Lecky Watson, Grange Clare West, Nick Rocket, the Grand National winner, I Am Maximus, James de Burley, and Sanicia. Those are all in at the moment at the 5-day stages. Factophile, the winner of the race last year, beating Spillans, Tower, Gallopin des Champs, and Fast or Slow is a superb race. That fantastic call from Jerry Hannon as well. Don, coming to you first here. Factophile, Gaelic Warrior, so many imponderables for Willie Mullins, but he has plenty of good horses to run, and I'm sure quite a lot of them will run as well.
Yeah, it was funny at the Willie Mullins kind of media day there a few weeks ago, Andrew. Every time a staying chaser was wheeled out, it was like, where's it starting? John Durkan Chase, maybe. And then John Durkan Chase, and yeah, John Durkan Chase maybe for him as well. So it was all John, and true to his word, they're all entered. Yeah, look, if half of these horses run, it'll be, look at the John Durkan Chase, it's always a hell of a race. And it's great that since they moved it back, since they put the Morgiana Hurdle and the John Durkan Chase on the same weekend and moved the John Durkan Chase back from early December to late November, the race has really benefited from it, and so has Christmas by extension, because now you can run at both meetings. Before this was a 3-week gap, I think, and while you can do that, it wasn't ideal. And Willie Mullins, for one, likes the spaces that the races are a little bit more. So it's great that it is on when it's on. Plus, it makes it a weekend of racing, no more than Navan last weekend and Fairyhouse the following weekend. So it's a top-notch weekend of racing, and this is the highlight of it. And Factophile, for me, he has to be the standard setter. He was so good in winning the race last year. He and Spillans Tower, the two novices from the previous season, you're wondering how they were going to match up with the experienced established brigade, and the answer was very well indeed. They finished first and second, and that was a massive performance for Factophile. He probably did even better, put up an even bigger performance when he won the Ryanair Chase at the Cheltenham Festival. Okay, you have to allow him his run at Punchestown, but A, it was over 2 miles, and B, I think you can always allow a horse. If a horse runs a race that's inconsistent with the bulk of his form at the end of a season, I think you can allow him that. So you can allow Factophile that. And the fact that he was so good on this day last year, on his seasonal return over the course and distance in this race, then that's a massive positive for him. Gaelic Warrior, he's got the King George on his radar. So, and we know that he's probably better right-handed than he is going left-handed. For all that, he's pretty good left-handed as well. So you can imagine he could come here and then go on to the King George after that. And it's brilliant that Fast or Slow is back in as well, Andrew. Like Martin Brazel did say a few weeks ago that he was on track for the John Durkan Chase. He's 9 years old now. He's the winner of a couple of years ago. He won this race. So it's brilliant that he's on track, and hopefully he goes there and we see him again and see him run his race. You've got the Gold Cup winner in there as well. I know the way you're thinking. He wasn't at his best in this race last year, and it's, not even 2.5 miles. It's 2 miles, 3.5 furlongs, which is probably short of his best. So you can see him running and coming on from it. And Hartwood, he's the one with race fitness on his side. He won the Grade 3 Chase at Punchestown there in October. So he's got a little bit to find on ratings, or a good bit to find on ratings. So, but he does have race fitness on his side. So you can see why Henry de Bromhead would want him to run. Lecky Watson, if he runs, he's probably a horse who's going to be better over further. So it's a starting point for him into the season. But yeah, look, Factophile, Andrew is the standard setter for me. He's probably going to be a short price. He's a short price already, but it's a race in which he's the one the title holder again from last season, and the rest of them kind of have to get up to his standard. I think he's got plenty in his favour in the race itself.
Yeah, it does look like it. It kind of seems like his ideal conditions, really. This kind of intermediate trip, soft ground is right up his street. Mark, I want to talk about, I know the way you're thinking for Gavin Cromwell. Well beaten in this race last year, but as we saw, got so much better as the year went on. I suppose more a word on Gavin Cromwell himself, just at the moment going through a pretty lean time of things. I think it's 1 from 60 in the last 2 weeks under both codes. Plenty of horses running well, but also some notable underperformances, especially at Cheltenham over the November meeting. So you'd think that there might be a little bit of lukewarmness about his run, and I'm sure they'll just be hoping, a little bit like what's happened with Galopin Des Champs last year, that you have a good run, but potentially not a winning one.
Look, we all know how good Gavin is. There's no question of that. And like over 12 months of the year, you can't expect to be absolutely cherry ripe the whole way through. But I think the current figure stands at 1 from his last 100 runners is 1. So that's not exactly going to be overly encouraging with a view to a race like this. But you imagine, I know he's saying that, I know the way you're thinking is in a sharper place this year, but it sounds of it. But when it ain't broke, I don't know if they're going to try and amend too much with him. I'd imagine we could see him get even closer again, but the distance is a big thing here. Like, he just, to me, does not strike me as a horse for this type of trip. When he gets the 3 miles plus, that's where you see the very best of him. In the spring, he came good too. So look at it. For all that, maybe he might be more of a player come Irish Gold Cup time, and he's nowhere near off my docket for Gold Cup time. He won't be really high on my list here. The way I look at the race, it feels like there's a chance that Willie Mullins could be building back from a King George with both Factified and Gaelic Warrior. We're not going to try and speculate Willie Mullins bingo this time of year, but I do think they could be in a similar place heading there fitness-wise, and I think Gaelic Warrior around Punchestown at this trip could be a lovely recipe for him, going the right way for him. I just feel, for all that he can be effective over further, that trip this time of year, he was so good in his beginner's chase here as well. He actually beat, I know the way you're thinking, 15 lengths in the beginner's chase here as a novice. I have a lot of respect for the horse, and just at the prices, it's not that I have anything against Factified, but you're getting kind of 11-4 Gaelic Warrior, and they could be going there with something else kind of to build on in mind, and the path of the stables runners this time of year. It just feels a little bit of a gap that it could be a bit of value potentially. I find it hard to stray away from either of the two, and fast or slow, echo down sentiments. Brilliant to have him back, but it would be a massive training performance to have him ready to do this off such a layoff. And I think if he was to shape well and kick on to the Savills at Christmas, I'd say they'd be very, very happy with him. And great to see Nick Rocket in the entries as well. There, even Lecky Watson, he could be one to be a sneaky one for a national if his jumping was to take that sort of shape come that time of year. You see horses that rating now, they're comfortable in that grade now of a national as it's got classier. So I think you have to have eyes in the back of your head everywhere with horses for different targets for this race. But I just do feel that the two classy ones and the value might be Gaelic Warrior.
Dan, I know you were a big fan of Fast or Slow, potentially going to a King George last year before his season was curtailed. You'd like to hope that there might be a positive run from him here, and a race like a King George or a Savills Chase wouldn't be beyond the bounds if he was to be able to kind of bring back that form from 2 seasons ago.
You talked about slips in the bin earlier. I'm still probably just wishing my Fast or Slow slip from this time last year was still alive. That was a beauty at around 12-1, declared for the race, or that was his target. Perfect. Oh, wait, he's out injured. It was an emotional roller coaster holding that slip for about a month or so, and very much Christmas ruined. But yeah, good to see him back. Obviously, a horse of his age coming back from an injury, that would be the concern. But Martin Brazel, no issue about getting one back from a long absence. So you go back to this time last year as well. He was very well back for this race. I think he won off 6-4 in the end, obviously to retain it against a host of Willie Mullins runners. And I guess that is the interesting factor with Willie's recent record in the race in terms of where the fancy runners have finished. I think you go back sort of the previous 7 or so renewals, the market always seemed to kind of know. Like Allaho won it at 7-2, the most shortest price of them when he ran 7. Min won 3 times in a row as the favourite when he ran multiple in that occasion. Jackadan was likewise. Last couple of seasons, Galopin Des Champs was the shortest price of his. It was slightly shorter than Factifile. Obviously, Factifile proved the winner. Galopin Des Champs was third at 1-2 on, when Appreciate It was the best of his the year before. So the more he's kind of running and the more angles and the more high-class horses he seemingly has at the minute, somewhat leads to a bit of a deviation in where the most fancied run, because we know this isn't the end goal for all of the horses in this race. So as a betting proposition, it becomes extremely difficult. But if there is one that maybe has the motivation to get back on track at a course and distance he knows well, and maybe with options potentially running out for him, then maybe that is Fast or Slow.
The final thing we usually do on the wire is our 60-second selections, which gives the lads a opportunity to put up as many horses as they feel like, whether that be in grade ones, whether there be something else throughout the weekend cards. And Dan, we'll come back to you first. What do you have for us?
Just the two. So he's in a couple of races, but I prefer him if he went to Ascot for the Berkshire National. That's Rock My Way for Joe Tizard, who is obviously in fantastic form at the minute. Shaped like he was in need of the run when we saw him at Cheltenham at the October meeting. Shaped pretty well. And his overall record, and also Joe Tizard's this season, would suggest he would improve for that run. Now a pound lower when runner-up in the National Hunt Chase, £2 lower when fifth in the Scottish National. And I think that test at Ascot would really suit him, but he is also at Haydock. And then the big 3-mile handicap hurdle at Haydock. If the ground gets really testing, then Esprit de Poitiers at 33-1 with the sponsors is going to be, I think, overpriced. I have a lot of respect for the likes of Marchand too, but this horse was a really exciting novice hurdler a couple of seasons ago. Only rated 127. They ran him in the Mersey, where he was not disgraced at all. Good reappearance run at Ayr. And I think so many of Lucinda Russell's and Michael Scudamore's have been needing their first run. No surprise if he was exactly the same. He's a prominent racer who thrives on soft ground, and his general record suggests, like Rock My Way, he very much improves for that first run of the season. So at 33-1, I thought he was just way too big.
Very good, Dan. Don, who are you fancying this weekend?
The Cheltenham Chase at Punchestown on Sunday, 2-mile novices race, the grade 2. I think relieved of duties, Gordon Elliott's horse is an interesting horse. I thought he did well to beat Full of Life at Fairyhouse on his chasing bow back in early October, and she went and enhanced that form since. And then last time at Cheltenham, again, he ran on well to finish second behind Al Nilam. He came from back in the field that day in a race in which the pace held up well. He's only had 2 runs over fences. He's a horse who can improve again, and the Cheltenham Chase, the test that represents, should suit him well. And yeah, I think he could be a big player in that.
So relieved of duties for Don. Mark, I'm hoping that you've still managed, even at the 5-day stage, to whip out something rated 96 running down in Cork on Sunday, something left field.
One called Middleton Rare that was beaten 10 lengths there at Navan on Monday. I think that'll win one going forward. You need to be prominent at Navan, it felt like, all weekend, and he made really good ground from behind for Ian Donoghue, who had only had the one winner, but by God, so many of his ran well. So if that satisfies you, Andrew, I'll throw that in as a horse to follow for going forward. But as far as this weekend goes, I'm looking forward in the Florida Pearl to seeing Rocky's Diamond again. I thought the run against Blizzard of Oz last time, had a fair experience edge on him, and in deeper race, I suppose, previously over fences. Just thought it was a decent showing. And this Declan Queally, in terms of getting them early kind of graded targets, we've seen what he's done with Elsart that. You'd imagine this would have been an obvious one in an Irish 3-mile novice chasing kind of calendar that is not as rich as it was before with the Leperson option gone. This has to be one you'd circle as a big target for them. And I don't think it's the deepest entry I've ever seen for it. I like Oscar's Brother as a type, maybe for an Irish national down the line. But just for here and now, I think Rocky's Diamond, he's a fair operator, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. You look at the entries across the board, Andrew, for Punchestown. Even see Woodoo entered in a listed mare's hurdle at Punchestown at the weekend. Of plenty of nice novices from last season that could be starting over fences. It's just one of those where your notebook will be full everywhere you look. But as far as win perspective go, I'll take Rocky's Diamond on Saturday.
Yeah, very good, Mark. A couple for myself. I'd be taking on Mark in the Florida Pearl with Oscar's Brother, actually.
There we go.
I thought it was between the two of them, personally speaking, and one that has 2 entries at Chepstow on Friday. It's a horse called Need a Win for Sam Thomas. Sam Thomas can do no wrong at the moment. You look back at that form from Foss Lass, where he was beaten back in January. At the time, you probably didn't think it was up to a whole pile, but Juby Bull won the race, and Lou Dore, a very impressive winner last week at Bangor, was back in second. I think he's got plenty more upside this year. But thanks to Dan, thanks to Don, and thanks to Mark to mark your card throughout the entirety of the Grade 1 action this weekend, and a few selections from a few of those races around the grounds as well. Of course, with the week that's in it, Safer Gambling Week, make sure to gamble responsibly throughout the weekend. Really do enjoy the action. If you can't get up for a weekend like this, you're in the wrong sport, and we'll see you again very soon on The Wire.
BOYLE Sports.